I wanted to talk about how I left, the steps that I took to actually leave America and come to New Zealand. When I decided to leave in 2016, just after Trump was elected, the first thing I did was start looking online for jobs in New Zealand. I am a construction manager. That is an essential skill in New Zealand, so it puts me on a special list of people who can find work quickly in the country. The good news is that no matter what you do for a living, it's probably an essential skill here in New Zealand. We need everybody. Chefs are an essential skill here. Automobile repair people is an essential skill here. It's ridiculous how long the list is of essential skills. So I looked online. I did my job searches for months. I sent off resume after resume. They call them CVs here. So I sent CV after CV to companies, construction companies that were looking for workers. No luck. After about 4 or 5 months of that, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere, so I reached out to recruiters instead. I'd gotten jobs in the US through recruiters. I'd found it very helpful, so I thought maybe I'd have better luck. That was the right move. If you're moving to New Zealand, definitely seek out the help of a recruiter. You'll have a much higher possibility of getting a job. The recruiters helped, and they processed my CVs and sent them out to companies, but even that wasn't having much luck. So finally, one of my recruiters said to me, look, the thing is, they just don't think you're serious. They don't believe any immigrant is serious about moving to New Zealand. They really want you to be on the ground. You have to have boots on the ground before they'll actually consider you. And they were right. So the recruiter said, why don't you come to New Zealand for a week? We'll set up some interviews. This will be your best chance. Yeah, that would have been a good idea probably, right? If you're going to move to a country, you should probably go check it out. So I asked my mother and my son to come with me. My wife was still working, so she wasn't able to go. And we took a flight to New Zealand. When I was getting on the plane, the recruiters didn't have any interviews lined up for me. So as I got on the plane, I was thinking, this could be a very large waste of money and time. But the moment I landed, something like 17 hours later, 20 hours later, there were 4 interviews waiting for me in 2 different cities. So we traveled around Auckland and Christchurch for the week. I went to the interviews, and fortunately, about a week later, after I returned to America, I received a job offer from one of those, and I took it. And I was on my way. I agreed to start work only a month later, which was probably a mistake. Previous to this, I think my wife thought that this was just another one of my crazy ideas and that it wasn't going to happen anytime soon. And when I came back with a job offer and said, we're moving in a month, now it was real, and we all started to panic. We made a decision to move all of our furniture to New Zealand. I know a lot of other immigrants decide to just take as much as they can in suitcases. We'd taken a look at the price of furniture in New Zealand and found it to be quite high. And we thought it would be a good idea if we took as much as we could with us. And that's a bit of a lie, because the truth is we have the world's most comfortable couch. A restoration hardware couch, leather. Oh man, you sit down on it, you never want to get up. We watch way too much TV, not because we want to, but because we can't get up. It's the kind of couch you can sleep on. It's probably more comfortable than most of the beds I've ever slept on in my life. So we weren't going anywhere without that couch. As long as we're taking the couch, we'll take the TV, a big screen TV. Big screen TVs are like $5,000 in New Zealand at the time. So we thought, well, we can't leave that behind. And as long as we're taking those, we might as well take everything else. My book collection, which is a ridiculous thing to bring, but I brought something like 25 boxes of books. So we filled the container. We filled the container with all of our belongings and brought them all with us. In retrospect, I think that was the right move. It cost $7,000 for the container to be shipped from New York City to New Zealand. But like I said, just the big screen TV alone was $5,000. A couch would have been another $2,000. So to come to New Zealand and have to refurnish would have cost well over $7,000. So I think that was definitely the right move. More importantly, we got to keep all of our belongings. So when we actually did move into a house and unpacked, we got to feel like we were here, like it was our things. Our life came with us. All of our personal things we loved. I mean, definitely, I would encourage you, if you have the means to, and you have things that you love, personal possessions, if you have a significant amount of furniture, definitely do that. We don't have IKEA yet in New Zealand. It's coming next year. We're looking forward to it. But at the time when we moved here, there was no such thing as cheap furniture in New Zealand. So it was the right move. Wherever you go, hire an immigration lawyer. It was worth every penny. We hired one, and they helped us with the paperwork. They were former immigration workers, so they knew the ins and outs. They knew everything that they needed to know about how to immigrate. But more importantly, when we got into any issues where we say, hey, look, what's taking so long? What's going on with this paperwork? They knew people who they could call. They would just pick up the phone and say, hey, Jill, why is this guy's paperwork taking so long? That was immensely helpful. It probably saved months off of our applications, maybe even years. I have friends who have tried to do it by themselves. Yeah, they waited a long time. It's not cheap. It cost us maybe like $2,000, $2,500. But if you can afford it, do it. Absolutely do it. One of the things that we had to do in New York on the way to getting our visas was get fingerprinted. New Zealand does a very extensive background check on your criminal history. I think this is true of pretty much every country. They really, it is hard to move out of America if you have a criminal record. Let's just say that right now. It doesn't mean you can't, depending on what you did. I know a lot of countries consider nonviolent crime as not so bad. I'm sure it still makes it a lot harder, and there's a lot more paperwork. In New York, we had to go get fingerprinted, which means we went down to City Hall, to the police station. We had to get fingerprints, get background checks, all of that. And all of that information gets sent direct to the New Zealand government. They don't come to you first. So you're sitting there, fingers crossed, wondering, is there something in my background that I forgot about or didn't know? Did I forget to pay that parking ticket? Is it now a felony offense? Just ridiculous stuff that runs through your head. But yeah, so you get treated as a criminal in order to show that you are not a criminal. And in our case, it was actually even more difficult than that, because my wife was not an American citizen. She was still coming from Hong Kong, and having that Hong Kong transition from British rule over to Chinese rule meant that she was technically a Chinese citizen. So her background information had to be sent to China. Even though she'd never lived in China, China was the one that needed to check her criminal records and send that to New Zealand. So that did take a bit of extra time. The other thing that is the most difficult part of moving here, and probably moving overseas to anywhere, as I said, one of the reasons we wanted to live here was because of the free healthcare, the healthcare system. Universal healthcare is key for us, but that means that because the state and taxes and the citizenry have to pay for healthcare, they don't want someone who's going to come in and use that healthcare extensively, which is why usually it's hard to emigrate after the age of 50, because as you get older, obviously you're going to use the healthcare system more. They don't want anyone with chronic illnesses. They don't want anyone with a major history of, say, mental illness or other issues that are going to put you into hospital more frequently than I guess a healthy person. So that was difficult, because that meant we had to go to the doctor. We had to get A, B, C, all kinds of tests. We got tested for everything. We had to have all kinds of blood drawn. We had to have our entire medical history written out and have it explained so that the doctor knew exactly what was our conditions. It is so rigorous. My wife had a very minor iron deficiency, but in order to pass through the paperwork, that iron deficiency was enough to stop her visa application. So she had to get iron pills and wait a month to retest for her iron before her visa application would restart again. So it's little things like that that is surprisingly difficult and is really going to hold up your visa application. So be prepared for that. It does take time. In my case, I moved to New Zealand in October. My wife and son did not have their visas sorted yet because of the medical issue. It would be another 3 months before they showed up in New Zealand. And I could tell you, that is not a situation you want to be in. It was pretty tense because here I was living in New Zealand. I was in an unfurnished apartment with a sleeping bag and a pillow and a bowl I was eating out of a bowl. And my family was back in New York. All the furniture had already been shipped. So they were also living in an empty apartment in sleeping bags for 3 months. The phone calls. Oh my God, the phone calls. And now we get to the worst part. Pets. If you decide to move a cat or dog to New Zealand, it's incredibly difficult. If you thought it was hard for human beings, it's 10 times more difficult for animals. New Zealand does not have any rabies in the country, and they want to keep it that way. Their pets are in excellent health. So as a result, you have to also take your cat to the vet. You have to have your cat take all these shots and be checked out. But more importantly, the timing is critical because you have to be checked up within days of the completion of it by a vet. Otherwise, they have to start all over again. I forget all the details because it was so freaking complicated. We shipped the cat to my mother's house on the West Coast, and she had to take it to the vet there, and we had her do all the vet visits. And then she had to take it to San Francisco because it has to be to a specific quarantine exit point. When the cat got there, it had to be checked by a vet again at the airport and proven. I think she spent 3 days in San Francisco because it needs to get this specific shot 72 hours before its flight. And if it doesn't, then it can't take the flight. It has to start all over again. It's a nightmare. So she spent 3 days in San Francisco. The cat had to be tested again at the airport, put on the plane. When it gets to New Zealand, the cat has to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. So we shipped it off to the kennel. Altogether, between all the doctor's visits, the visas, the paperwork, the flight, the kennels, it cost $5,000 for this cat to come over. It's a tabby cat. We don't even have a special cat. It's just a regular cat off the street in New York. So that was surprising. If you have a family member that can take your animal and you can move to New Zealand and get a new animal, I would highly recommend you do not bring your pets. And I understand other countries are just as hard. Our cat experienced PTSD as a result of all of this travel, and he has not been the same since. He was a pretty normal, regular, happy, playful cat in New York. After he spent hours and hours on the plane, locked up in a kennel, and then 2 more weeks locked up in quarantine with all the other cats, pissing on himself and miserable and wondering what's happening to him. When he came out of that kennel, he has never been the same. And I read the book, Our Bodies Keep the Score, and I was reading about PTSD, and I realized, oddly enough, all of those symptoms perfectly matched the cat. So for the last 7 years, I have had a very grumpy, very moody cat, which is not the one that I shipped from New York. So just be aware that could happen to your loved one, your pet. So if you do have pets that you can leave it with a relative, you might want to do that. It might be better for them. And then there are a lot of pets here already in New Zealand, lots of cats and dogs that need adoption. So I do encourage you to come without your pet, and you can definitely find a very sweet animal when you get here that will love you and you can love back and won't have PTSD. Last year, we became New Zealand citizens. We are officially Kiwis. Becoming a citizen of another country is another experience altogether, because being born a citizen is one thing. You didn't make a choice about that, but you had to make a choice about where you want to spend the rest of your life. So becoming a citizen of another country, that feels very personal. It's something that you wanted to be, and we wanted to be Kiwis. So we stood in a room with 200 other people in an auditorium to receive our citizenship. There were 40 countries represented there. They started the ceremony. They said, "We're going to read out the countries, and when you hear your country called, we want you to stand up and cheer for that country." That was amazing. So they would call out every country those 40 countries, and then someone in the audience would jump up and cheer. And when they said America, we jumped up and cheered. It was beautiful to see that kind of enthusiasm for the country that you come from when you're getting citizenship for the country that you're now in. One of the things they said during the ceremony was, "Our past is now your past. Your future is now our future." Because New Zealand wants immigrants. They want people to feel a part of their culture. It's nothing like you would experience in America for immigration. America gives the impression that it hates immigrants. It does have citizenship ceremonies, but it's all about becoming American, and it's just not the same vibe. New Zealand celebrates the fact that it has people from all over the world, and it celebrates you, and it wants you to feel like you're still proud of the country you come from. In fact, they actually said to us, "We don't want you to forget where you came from. We want you to honor your first country and the culture you were born into." I actually cried during the ceremony. I mean, I get kind of choked up right now, just thinking about how beautiful that is. What other country welcomes you into their arms and says, still be proud of who you are, be proud of where you come from, and we're proud to have you here because now you and I, we're an us. That's amazing. And that made it all worth it to me. So all those trials and tribulations of getting the visas, of having the difficulty of moving to a new country, of moving and meeting new people and having culture shock, it's all worth it. Because at the end of the day, when you move to a country like New Zealand, you're not leaving something behind. You're becoming a part of something new. So what are you waiting for? If you're thinking seriously about leaving America, especially if you want to move to New Zealand, check out our sponsor, VBI.NZ. That's NZ to us Americans. You can book an appointment with someone who can answer your questions about immigration and help you understand your strengths moving overseas. The link is in the show notes below. Please subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Are you planning to leave America? What are your reasons? And where would you go? I want to hear about it. See you soon, or as we say in New Zealand, see you out there.